star 572-0383 and 572-0215. Rev Up St. Lucia, the alpha of radio.
Join the United Workers' Party this and every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM for an educational and informative program, Meet the Opposition. Participate in exciting discussions from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Be in the know every Thursday on Rev Up St. Lucia 97.1 from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
It's now time for Meet the Opposition, hosted by Lenard Spider Montoute. Mr. Montoute, welcome once again.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning to you. Good morning to all our viewers and listeners. And I am hoping that we'll have a great day today, some interesting discussions. I do not have a guest, but of course, as always, we will open the line so that our listeners and viewers can call in to have their say here on Meet the Opposition. But this morning, Andre, I will be tackling a subject that is like the white elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to discuss, but it does exist and we might as well deal with it. The issue of crime. I mean, it is no secret that in the last 2 weeks we had a spate of murders here in St. Lucia. We heard very little from our government officials, in particular the individuals responsible for the issue of crime, namely the minister responsible for crime prevention and the Prime Minister, who's the Minister of National Security. I mean, I did hear some comments from the Minister for Crime Prevention during the cabinet briefing, on Tuesday, but I mean, there was no substance there. I mean, in terms of, it's the usual thing, we are recruiting 80 new police officers, we are this, we are that. Nothing different, nothing new, nothing that has shifted the needle, nothing that has changed the situation. And it is about time that they realize, like Dr. Kenny Anthony once said, what we have been doing has not been working. As a matter of fact, we are at the juncture now where things are getting worse, because at least a dozen murders in the space of 2 weeks is far too many for a small island like St. Lucia. On top of that, Andre, the last case here, I cannot say it is a homicide. We do not know, because investigations are being carried out. I was told that a post-mortem will be done, but this time it was the body of a visitor that was discovered. Now, from what we are hearing in the news, the Americans are on top of that situation because the family is liaising with the American embassy and all of that, so they are paying close attention to what is going on here. Now, that further compounds our problems if it turns out to be what I am hoping, and I'm hoping that we all are hoping, is not the case. And that is, there was no foul play, and it was not a case of a visitor being murdered here in St. Lucia. The crime atmosphere is enough to cause advisories from the countries from which we get our tourists. But when their nationals are directly involved, it makes it even worse. Already we are on advisory lists on various countries, including the United States. We do not want to, muddy the waters any further by making things worse for ourselves. I've always said the crime situation, like there are many other crises we have here, like health and all of that, but the crime situation goes way beyond just the criminal act that is performed. It has far-reaching implications for us in terms of our freedom, in terms of our quality of life, and in terms of our economic survival. Given the fact that we depend on tourism, crime in St. Lucia that does not even involve tourists can jeopardize the tourist industry, let alone if tourists are being targeted or are becoming victims. And so that is where I am particularly concerned, and I'm hoping that it will not be the case. But if it is, I'm hoping that our authorities here, namely the government officials, especially those with direct responsibility for crime fighting or crime prevention, will not play the usual partisan political games that they play, will not come with the usual political rhetoric but recognize that this is a serious national crisis and do something about it, do something tangible, do something meaningful, do something impactful about it, and let it be known that they are serious about stamping out the scourge of crime, especially violent crime that is taking place here, gun-related crime that is happening here.
And Mr. Montoute, let me just remind you, don't forget Tyson.
Tyson, that's correct. That's correct.
I hope we haven't forgotten.
I mentioned the spate of murders. I mentioned the body that was found, of the tourist that was found. I did not mention Tyson. That all of that happened within the last 2 weeks as well. And that is a serious development, because unlike what, for example, Richard Frederick was making a mockery out of the situation in the house, laughing when they said a dog was murdered and kya and so on. I think that was despicable. I think that was very, very distasteful. And, I was there saying, Lord, I hope the French officials are not watching this and that does not reach them, because they are concerned about the situation, because it has, as I said before, has implications for them in terms of, St. Lucia being used as a transshipment for drugs and guns and so on into Martinique. And so, besides, they gave us the gift of that police dog, well-trained police dog, that was doing such a wonderful job in terms of crime fighting. And for us to lose that dog under suspicious circumstances as we did, I remember hearing the French ambassador to St. Lucia, making the statement, and he didn't have to say that, but he made the statement, and that meant something to me, that this is not the first time it is happening. Okay, he did indicate that it happened sometime before, and so on. And so,
no, I didn't hear Richard's statements, and I find it strange that that's not making the rounds. I find it very, very strange. So, what were his comments
Andre,
about?
I'll be honest with you, I did not replay that on my show, because I was hoping that, that, to be honest, we're not covering up for despicable behavior, but I'm concerned about the implication it could have for us. Because I listened to the ambassador, and he was being, like an ambassador is supposed to be, very diplomatic. But the man was pissed off, Andre. I could tell. And he said that he is hoping that a serious investigation will be carried out. And the man went further to say he hopes that the dog will be given, well, not in those words, but something to that effect, like the send-off that it deserves. So, unlike Richard, he's not just looking at it as just a dog. And he did mention that it is costing them over $20,000 to prepare one of those dogs, And so it is a valuable crime-fighting asset, and I'm sure they themselves can make use of it, but they gifted it to us. And the least that we could have done is show our appreciation by taking care of that dog. And yes, a dog is alive, a dog will die at some point, but not through those kind of circumstances that suggest either malice or carelessness or whatever the case might be. And so I'm sure he'll be very perturbed if heads do not roll as a result of that, because that will make a statement that we simply do not have appreciation, we do not care, and we ourselves are facilitators of crime in effect. And so, you're right, Tyson should not be forgotten. And I'm hoping too, Andre, unlike the norm in St. Lucia, Spider, wear glasses. Oh, I'm investigating her. And I come back here for the next year. I never say to you, Andre, the glasses were broken, the glasses were found there, that nothing, no report. And mind you, all those investigations very often cost us, the taxpayers, money. So we have a right to know what is the outcome of those investigations. Were there, in fact, investigations done? Were there serious investigations done? Were there cover-up in the investigations that were done? Because I'm very suspicious about what is happening in St. Lucia right now as far as crime is concerned. I'm worried that we have organized crime at a very high level in this country. And the reason why I say so is because a dog will discover 17 guns and 3,000 rounds of ammunition. A dog will sniff out cocaine to the value of $4 million easy dollars. But the police have not arrested anyone. Andre, it is very easy, especially things that come through the port, to trace its origin. It is very easy to trace its destination. That, to my knowledge, has not been done because no arrests were made, no, reports of any, body being held for questioning or anything like that. It means then that the dog did its job, but the job was not completed because the rest of it had to be done on the part of humans. And these are the things that tells me that there just may be people well placed in high places that are facilitators of the criminal activity.
Is that what you mean when you say organized crime? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I say organized crime, not only the criminals organize among themselves, but to be able to go through our ports, Andre, in a small country like St. Lucia especially, to be able to penetrate our ports, to be able to have their distribution network and so on. There are people in high places who are well placed, either turning their heads, closing their eyes, shutting their mouths, for whatever reason, whether it be for favors, for rewards, for incentives. That, I believe, is happening in this country. And I see evidence that that must be the case. And it was further confirmed to me when I did not hear any arrests were made in all of those busts that were being made. Because it's, the dog is not discriminating. The dog will, any barrel, box, container that has drugs, money, or ammunition in it, the dog will sniff it out. But then who discriminates is the humans. That will determine, well, boy, I know Spider. We brush that under the carpet and that kind of thing.
So is your party concerned about the fact that so many firearms, illegal firearms, were found and whatever, ammunition or drugs or whatever?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Because up to now, we haven't heard anything from the authorities as far as that is concerned.
Exactly.
That is one case. And then you have the Tyson situation.
And of course, we're hoping that this last case of the visitor is maybe... I'm hoping that...
Yeah.
I mean, it is sad that he perished. We wish that never happened, but it happened. We're hoping that there's a case where he had epilepsy or some natural illness or something...
Or maybe a drowning.
Or drowning or something of that nature. That can happen to anyone. We're hoping that that is the case. Because we cannot afford any more of those kind of situations that will further tarnish our image and reputation.
In fact, that story actually made the international press.
It did. It did.
Yeah.
And which tells you, Andre, we are being monitored. They are closely watching what is happening here. And, these are the things that will expedite the actions of the international community that are already looking at us suspiciously. They'll expedite the action into, say, putting a travel ban on us, issuing advisories to their nationals not to travel to St. Lucia and things like that. And we cannot afford that. We cannot afford that. And so when you look at what our government has done, what they do, I want to discuss that further. But I have, because of the fact that in any case, whether it is accidental, natural death, or foul play, we have a visitor, a tourist, who perished in St. Lucia. I have standing by, Andre, the former Minister of Tourism, Dominic Fede, who is a currently endorsed candidate for the United Workers' Party for the constituency of Ancillary Canneries. He is the deputy political leader of the United Workers' Party. I feel if I have to speak to anyone in the United Workers' Party, he's probably best placed. I really want to get his take and his opinion. So we'll be joining Dominic Fede, who will be calling in, because not here with us in studio, will be calling in, so that we can hear his take, his view. So as soon as he calls in, we will be, putting him on air so that I can ask him a few questions, you may ask him a few questions, Andre, so that we can hear his version of it. Because the authorities who are currently in office pretend that is none of their business. These are the things. We have to be proactive. We have to, deal with the situations ahead of time, not wait until everything falls apart and then try to piece it together. And so I am not surprised, and I'm not holding my breath that I'm going to hear from the Minister of Tourism or from the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of National Security, or even from the Minister of Crime Prevention. So,
as regards
to that situation, and I'm saying we do not know that it is a crime. We do not know that, but still, you want to take all preemptive measures, give the international community the assurance that we are looking into it seriously, and we're hoping, we doubt and we're hoping that it is anything to do with foul play, but if it is, we give you the assurance that we're going to be, seriously make them realize that we're going to begin getting to the bottom of it, we're going to, that kind of thing. But now, we do not want to give the image that, okay, we are just a crime haven and we couldn't be bothered and people are not secure in St. Lucia and life doesn't matter here. That's not the image we want to give. So I would like Dominic Fede to call in. If I assume he's listening to us, so he should be calling. What is the number, Andre?
572-9710. That's the fixed line. 572-9710. Or he can call the WhatsApp platform 287-0971. The WhatsApp platform is 287-0971. So
okay.
Whenever he's ready.
As soon as I will continue my discussion, but as soon as he calls in, we'll break to hear his comments and, So, Andre, I mean, talking about this whole situation about crime fighting, and again, I listened very carefully to hear what's new that the government will be coming with in terms of the efforts, given what is happening. Because you see, and I will hit them hard on this one, because I'll tell you why. They're quick to say to you, crime should not be politicized. Crime is not a political matter. Well, crime should not be politicized, but crime is a political matter, because it is the political directorate who are in a position to do something by way of policies and implementing, actions and providing resources to fight crime.
In addition to that, if you as a party or government, you decide to take the credit when it goes down.
That is the thing. That is the thing. We had a little reprieve earlier this year, and several ministers. Okay, I had the Prime Minister, I heard the Minister of National Security, Crime Prevention, I heard Richard Frederick, I can't remember if I heard Dr. Ernest. Let me not say that I did, but I for sure I heard those gentlemen come out and make comments about the improvement in the crime statistics. So if you can take credit for it, and I do not know that they did anything to cause that situation, by the way, but they're taking the credit. If you take the credit, take the responsibility as well. And so but in any case, you are in fact responsible. So I was hoping to hear, Andre, that we're going to make better use of technology. Because let me just say to you, the criminals of today are far more sophisticated than the criminals we were dealing with years ago.
So when you say sophisticated, can you explain?
Well, they will find ways, quite apart from the big money that is involved now, that they can pay off. They have enough money to pay off people, even in high places, to turn a blind eye. Quite apart from that, the criminals can monitor the police through technology. Some of them, for example, if a crime is taking place in Grosley, Andre, I can have guys all around the road with their cell phones and go tell me, well, we saw a police vehicle pass by or something to that effect, you know what I'm saying? And I do not know, some of them may have ways of intercepting, we do not know if they are at that level. I'm not in the crime ring to know. But when I talk about technology, I know that these guys, the kind of money that is in play, they will spare no effort to ensure that they are successful with their drug operation and their crime operations. So I can very well imagine that they will spend money into putting technology to work. You
also said that they're paying people in high places. So, Mr. Montoute, without going into any detail or anything, you have evidence of that?
Well, I said I'm not surprised if they are, and I believe they are. I don't have evidence of it, but what I'm seeing suggests that to me. Now, let me just say something to you, Andre. I'll put you on the spot. You're not trained in crime fighting. You're not being paid to fight crime. You have your business in about, which I'm sure you give priority over everything else. Despite all of that, minding your business, no training, no background, nothing, there's enough that you and I on the streets get to know. Just because through the grapevines, the talk goes around.
Yes.
When anything happens, you hear in the shwee, 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 that is the case, that is so-and-so do it. So you tell me the police not in that same environment, they're not in that same society. And the police are trained while you and I are not. They are being paid to do it while you and I are not. So in other words, you and I are not even paying attention, but we're getting to know. So you tell me they do not know?
Well, I'm sure they hear, but as I said a while ago about the evidence.
Well, I'm saying to you,
because I remember...
we do not have the evidence, but the police is being paid to find out. Once you get a lead... Because
I remember, Mr. Montoute, when Mr. Francis was National Security Minister...
That's right.
Right. I remember I did an interview with him, and he was saying about how so many killers are out in the public. I think he said about 80 of them and so on. And I asked him, I said to him, well, you're aware of that, so why don't you move on these individuals? And he said, the problem is getting the evidence.
Right. No,
So just as you said, they hear certain things.
Yeah. But sometimes too, Andre, the sooner you move, the better it is, before they get rid of the evidence or cover up the evidence or what have you. While things, it's like they say, eat while the iron is hot. So
sorry to disagree. I believe
is that okay? We'll go to him. We'll interrupt and we'll go to him. So we have Senator Dominic Fede, who is the deputy political leader of the United Workers' Party, a former minister of tourism, and he is on the line. And I am happy that he is on the line because I want to question him about what is taking place right now. We had this incident that I mentioned of a tourist perishing. We do not know that there is foul play. We are hoping that it isn't, but if it is, we know that it can have dire consequences for us as a tourism destination. So, good morning to you, Senator Fede, and welcome to Meet the Opposition.
Hi, Spider. Thank you very much. Good morning, Andre, my good friend. How are you?
Morning. I'm well. How about you?
Very good, thanks. Very good.
Nice hearing your voice again.
Discussion.
Man, I asked you to call the program and you're saving your special greetings for Andre.
I haven't seen him in a while, Spider. We go way back.
No, just a little jealousy, that's all.
Yeah.
So
Andre has the reputation of being a godfather in the media.
Right. Okay, well, yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
So in other words, what you're telling me, the man has earned that. Yes. So
years of service, yeah.
Yeah, great to have you. And I'm happy that I have you here because while I'm in no position to say what the next cabinet of the United Workers' Party will be, none of us will be surprised if you end up being tourism minister. But in any case, that notwithstanding, you were the former minister of tourism in the last United Workers' Party administration. And you would be a little more conversant on the issue of tourism than ordinary persons like myself. So I'm calling you in there to get your take on this new development, what we have heard there, which is, to me, frightening. And when I say that, quite apart from just being a St. Lucian, I have interest in the tourist industry. And so I'm concerned. So I want to hear your take, your view, and perhaps to share with us the perspective of the United Workers' Party on such situations. Like I said, we do not know that there is any foul play, but there are investigations, we are told, taking place. A post-mortem is being conducted, and we are hoping that it does not go the usual route of investigation taking place, investigation not completed, we don't hear anything about investigation. So let me hear your take.
Well, I think, Spider, the longer we take to confirm or deny that there is foul play, what it's going to do is to only increase suspicion, and it is only going to increase speculation. And, we know from history that every time a tourist dies, the brand St. Lucia hemorrhages, and it receives a lot of bad press in the international media.
Yeah, Andre was just bringing to my attention that it is already in the international media.
Correct. So it is important for the repair of the brand and for the safeguarding of the brand for us to confirm whether it is foul play or not. I think that it's taking way too long. This is a very sensitive story, and it moves very quickly. You see, Spider, the travel markets, U.S., Canada, U.K., they see the smaller islands of the Caribbean as paradise. And, it just takes a little freaky incident like this for them to go berserk and start covering this story as if paradise has gone wrong. So we've got to make sure that we are on top of this to ensure that the requisite damage control is done, because the consequences are quite severe. However, though, Spider and Andre, this incident, which we're all very deeply concerned about, follows, mounting concerns from the hoteliers in St. Lucia. You would recall that recently the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association would have written a letter to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, and they expressed significant concern in that letter to the police. It was also copied to the tourism minister. And what the SLHTA said was that there was increased visitor harassment, visitor theft. There was a lot of burglaries into tourism establishments. There was the beating of tourists, stabbings, and all kinds of incidents. I remember clearly the leader of the opposition one evening on his way home having to come to the rescue of a tourist that was robbed and beaten and being laid on the street side of Rodney Bay. You remember that incident, right, Spider?
Yes.
Yeah. So you see, we've had a significant number of these incidents before.
You see, the rest of us hardly know of those things. I knew of that incident because of my association with the leader of the opposition. Most St. Lucians do not know of that incident because there is in fact a suppression of information on crime. And when you speak about the crime situation, the Prime Minister accuses you of being enemies of the state and enemies of progress and all of that kind of thing. Whereas you do so out of concern because you can't pretend it is not happening. You have to know that it is happening and deal with it. So but go ahead, Dominic.
But there has been a traditional suppressing of information from the tourism industry because they are often concerned about the loss in reputation, the loss in business. And, whenever you would have had someone robbed or stabbed or burgled, there have been rape cases in hotels as well, historically. And so the tourism sector is walking a tightrope. They want to sell paradise, but unfortunately, paradise goes wrong sometimes. And so we don't have a true appreciation for the severity of the crime situation that is impacting.
But Dominic, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm no expert in tourism, but just from common sense, like yes, we want to sell a good image of St. Lucia. We want to lure visitors to St. Lucia, but don't you think it will be dangerous to go to the extreme and exaggerate and so on, so that when any little thing goes wrong, then we are destroyed, our reputation goes bad and so on, as opposed to being real? Do not do certain things. Like when I travel to certain countries and they give us information, even at the hotel, do not go to certain places, do not do certain things, do not walk with your chains out there, pickpockets, there, this and that. So you alert people to the realities, if it exists, so that they can be better protected from it. And at the same time, you in the destination, you know what exists, what the situation is. You put safeguards, like whether it is beef up your police patrol, whether police presence and so on, and you do the things like putting your cameras and whatever, what have you, to deter these things, as opposed to pretending that it does not exist, whereas it does. So your view on that?
You would recall quite recently, Spider, I think it might have been a year and a half ago, where the PR department of the tourism board would have sent a circular to the media asking them not to cover a certain incident against a certain tourist. You recall that?
I recall, yes.
And so this is a very good example of how the entire tourism industry is approaching the crime situation. So not being real with it, not confronting it head on, trying to sweep issues under the carpet has been to their detriment. But I do understand it is not their role to solve the crime situation. It is the government's role to ensure that we have a safe St. Lucia, not only for tourists, but also for St. Lucians.
That's right.
St. Lucia must be a place where it is safe to live, it is safe to travel, and people will come once you make it safe. We have a lot of incidents against cruise ship passengers walking around Castries as well. Sometimes without any direction, they go into, the wrong parts of town that locals will not venture. And things happen. And, either the cruise agent or the tourism officials will try to do a hush-hush situation. But this is a bigger problem than we understand. In that same letter, Spider, the SLHT also highlighted to the government their disgust with the closure of the Rodney Bay police station, which the hoteliers contributed. Actually,
they're the ones who
did a number of fundraisers and donated and financed the project.
Right.
And so for them, to see that this facility that they would have worked hard and to make provisions for is now closed, it really defeats the whole purpose of trying to reduce the amount of crime that tourists and locals alike visiting the Rodney Bay area and other such areas would confront. And then we've got the issue in Castries as well. Now, you see, I would say, Spider, that the Prime Minister has been too weak on this issue. I was very happy to see him say at the press briefing on Monday that the St. Lucia Labour Party has zero tolerance for crime and that he does not condone crime. What he has been saying before that is that he is not the police, is that his father was the police officer, and that his job is only to give the police resources.
Although Dominic, I mean, you are very much an active politician. I'm no longer, so perhaps that's why I speak the way that I do. But let me just say something to you. After 4 years, the time for talk is long gone. I want to see action. Don't come and tell me about zero tolerance and whatever. Because you have not shown that you have zero tolerance for crime. Okay? There are many things I want to point out that clearly indicates that this government does not have a zero tolerance for crime. Okay, so, and I will go into that a little further. I didn't want to interrupt you for too long, but go ahead. I just had to make that point.
Yeah, so he has been too weak on the crime situation. When you sign up to be Prime Minister, Spider, you have signed up for one of the most sacred jobs in St. Lucia, and that is, first of all, you have to ensure the safety of the people of St. Lucia, safety and prosperity. Yeah. And when the Prime Minister, who also, by the way, holds the national security portfolio, it makes his job and it makes that responsibility even more important and crucial towards the safety of not just tourists coming to the country, but to all of us. The opposition has always been willing, Spider, to work with the government. You would recall that.
But the government has not been willing to work with the opposition. Yeah.
No, they haven't. They haven't. Yeah. The leader of the opposition recommended that we should set up a command center to fight crime, as we did against COVID.
Yes.
Because you see, what we have on board is a crime pandemic that is affecting our country.
Yeah.
Record-breaking
years. It is no less a menace than COVID was. You know.
That is correct. Record-breaking years. Several young people losing their lives. The proliferation of gangs throughout the length and breadth of our country is horrendous. The latest situation in the graveyard where Rosh, our colleague, lost his cousin who was pregnant. Imagine the other circumstance of the father who was going to get his hair combed to go to his daughter's graduation, and he never made it to the graduation. Imagine the trauma of his daughter.
And do not forget the young man who had graduated the Thursday, and by the weekend he was dead, shot.
There you go.
I mean,
not even our schools are safe. We're seeing stabbings and choppings in schools.
Well, as for that, I don't even talk about that, and we pretend as if it does not happen. But let us not forget, if we talk about a dozen incidents of gun shootings, gun violence, there are probably dozens more where the people were not hit, or they are just injured and didn't die. And we even hearing of cases where people die weeks afterwards and not even counted among the number of homicides. And so it is far worse than it appears to be. And I can tell you, if we allow it to fester and grow, then we will have a serious problem. We won't have a country.
That is absolutely correct.
But Dominic, I want to pivot a little, because we're talking about the situation there and the possibility that if this is a crime that was perpetrated against the tourists, what implications it can have. I want to talk about, in a case where that happens, the potential implications. I'm hearing about travel ban, that St. Lucia is on a list of countries that can potentially be banned from the United States, from the European Union countries, from the UK and so on. I want you to comment on that, because while we know what the long-term implications are in terms of our economy, what are the immediate actions that can lead to that if a situation like that occurs?
Well, Spider, with your permission, I always take the prompting of host, but I want to ask you to stay a little longer on the crime situation, because I want to make this point before we said.
Well, go ahead, go ahead, because yeah. I mean, I always accommodate my guests.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. They had a friend of mine who had a show on DBS on a Thursday night. He used to say, "This is my show and I control it." You know that guy?
Rick Wayne.
There you go. But what I want to say more importantly, Spider, is this. The politics must set the tone. Politics must set the direction. It must set the mode in which a country should go. And when a government, as this government has been, continues to preach hate and racism and division and come up with a political narrative that divides all of us and to encourage us to reach for the worst of us, it really then, Spider, degrades the entire society into a society of lawlessness. I mean, you look at Richard Frederick's show, for example, on a Thursday night. The most terrible and awful things are being spewed. And the Prime Minister, for the most part, have been silent. And when you're silent, Spider, it is your tacit approval of what is being said. You know, a minister goes and hurl insults to women and to anyone who expresses a different political views.
But I mean, let's not forget he's not just silent, you know, he's responsible for Richard Frederick being placed where he is, a position in which he can use it to get information, sensitive information about individuals that he's prepared to go on television and publicly divulge.
That's right. And you know, what is more interesting about this is that Philip Pear, who had a front row seat to everything that Kenny Anthony did and stood for as his deputy prime minister, knew fully well that Kenny Anthony never wanted Richard Frederick. In fact, Philip Pear himself is on the SLP platform of the election of 2011, of which you participated in, Spider.
That's right. And
Richard at the time was a candidate for the United Workers' Party in Central Castries.
Yeah. And the SLP made Lucifer himself look like an altar boy by Richard, you know.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. And so, Spider, Philip Pear himself, the tapes will show, said that the St. Lucia Labour Party will never have a drug dealer in their cabinet.
That's right.
He said that the St. Lucia Labour Party will never have a money launderer. He said that the St. Lucia Labour Party will never have a minister whose visa was revoked from the United States. And so as we contemplate the travel bans that you speak of, the St. Lucia Labour Party, they have preached a message consistently suggesting that St. Lucia had to be in line with U.S. policies, had to have good relations with the United States, and it was considered a cardinal sin for a government minister not to have qualified for a U.S. visa. Don't forget that.
That's right.
You know, that's all on the record.
But today we have a Philip J. Pierre who has been part of the of the St. Lucia Labour Party all this time, and in a leadership position at that, because he was Dr. Kenny Anthony's deputy. And today, without any explanation, for him to embrace that same Richard Frederick, place him in his cabinet, even when he was not even a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party, he brought him into his cabinet. Now, the irony is, they don't think Richard Frederick is fit enough to become a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party, but they have imposed him on St. Lucians as a member of cabinet. Okay?
But it tells you what they think of all of us,
That's correct.
Spider.
That's correct.
He's not good enough to be a member of their party, but he's good enough to be a member of our cabinet.
But in all fairness to the St. Lucia Labour Party, the members of the St. Lucia Labour Party do not want Richard Frederick as because they know they are the ones who told us who Richard Frederick is. But it is the Prime Minister who has the prerogative to determine who sits in cabinet. And even when his party does not want a character like Richard Frederick as a member of their party, and he publicly disassociates the St. Lucia Labour Party with Richard Frederick, he feels no compunctions about making Richard Frederick a member of the cabinet. And that begs the question why. Because Richard Frederick is serving his personal purposes, being a mouthpiece to him, kissing up to him, and doing his dirty work for him, some of his dirty work for him. And so, you have to ask yourself, how genuine is an individual like this? How much of a leader is an individual like this? To the extent that he's compromised.
Spider, that Philip Pear is weak on crime. He has been a facilitator of all kinds of hate speech.
And the St. Lucia Labour Party government, the St. Lucia Labour Party government, I can say safely and boldly, is complicit in facilitating and allowing crime in this country and encouraging crime in this country. Okay, and I mean, it was said at the Sunday Live, and I will repeat it. At the end of the day, when I look at this St. Lucia Labour Party government, they are compromised. And when you are compromised, you do not have the legitimacy or authority to speak on the subject where you are compromised. And that is what is happening to the government. That is why you see all those criminal activities take place here, all the organized crime that is taking place here, all the suspicious underhand activities, all the corruption. They cannot speak on it because they have lost the authority and they have lost the legitimacy to speak on it because they are compromised.
Yeah. It's like a father saying to a son, "Do not smoke," but yet his son catches him smoking, and he says, "But Daddy, why are you smoking and I can't?"
Right.
What do you say then? So the Labour Party, they have failed to set the right example. They have failed to be the role model. They have failed to lead on this issue. And unless you can lead on this issue, setting a tone, sending the right signal for the direction of the country, it is impossible for you to solve crime. Giving the police vehicles will not solve the situation. That has been done before,
yes.
Right?
That has been done continuously over and over again.
Over and over again. That has been done before. And all of that has failed according to Kenny Anthony. Don't forget.
But Dominic, let me do something here that you will not do because, I suspect you're not into the chest beating business. But I am not a candidate of the United Workers' Party, so I can do it. I must say, I give kudos to the United Workers' Party in terms of their seriousness about fighting crime, the kind of measures that you all well, not you all at the time, I can say we, because I was part of the government then, were taking. And I want to remind St. Lucians that the United Workers' Party got into office under Alan Chastanet and immediately ventured into opening up the forensic lab, which is a major tool in crime fighting in terms of solving crime in St. Lucia. The United Workers' Party under Alan Chastanet, do not forget, put in place the K9 unit, which goes a long way in detecting illicit drugs, detecting large sums of cash, detecting guns and ammunition coming in through our ports. The United Workers' Party under Alan Chastanet was setting up what they call the border control to ensure that our very porous borders would be better protected against all the illicit and illegal smuggling that was taking place around the island through our porous borders. That in itself tells me that was a government that was serious about crime fighting. I remember too, on the Alan Chastanet and Herman Gill Francis, the cameras.
Symposium.
Pardon?
The symposium?
Not only the symposium, but the CCTV cameras that were being placed, around the island, on our highways and byways and so on. All of these are crime-fighting efforts that were being used. And if you realize, back then, we had less crime. we had far less homicides taking place in this country. Come the St. Lucia Labour Party, they disbanded the K9 unit, they destroyed the scanners, they squashed the border control, unit that was being set up and all of that, and we saw a resultant increase in crime. Now, we tend to measure crime by homicides, but that's not the only crime that is taking place. It's the worst, because like I've always said, when someone dies, that is the ultimate. It's irreversible, So, I'm not very surprised, and I see only one solution, because after 4 years, you can't blame the previous administration. After 4 years, you cannot say you have not had time to begin to implement your policies and that we could start seeing the results of your policies. Well, we are seeing the results of the policies of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and it's not good. Back to you, Dominic.
Yes. And you're absolutely right, Spider. And in addition to all of those things you've mentioned, we have not had a forum where the government has called a meeting to bring together civil society groups, political parties, to come together and to discuss crime in the manner that we did while we were in government, where we had various focus groups. We even had a national crime symposium.
Right.
And I think the person that represented the opposition at that meeting was the leader of the opposition himself. Mm-hmm. So we are too small as a country, too few people, for us to then go into red and yellow clans. What we have to do, Spider, is to find common solutions. We have to work together as a country to help to solve crime. And that's what we were trying to do in the United Workers' Party.
And let me just make the point. You talk about colors. The opposition cannot, contrary to what the Prime Minister is trying to suggest, gloat about crime and feel that they are immune or exempted or anything like that. In the last spate of killings, a United Workers' Party candidate's cousin was a victim. And that cousin was the lady who was 7 months pregnant. And apart from losing her life, she lost the baby as well. And so crime does not discriminate in terms of looking at colors or party. The government may want to discriminate, but crime doesn't. And so sometimes when it hits home, that's when we sit up and take note. I mean, for the people in government right now, it is more difficult for it to hit home because they have access to security and all of that. But they must be mindful that will not last forever.
Yes. And Spider, I think most importantly, it must be noted as well that during the cabinet that you and I served in, there was a very strong, aggressive program to create opportunity for young people. We didn't call it the youth economy.
Right.
But here is what happened to youth unemployment. So if you reference the Economic and Social Review, you will see that in 2015, the youth unemployment rate was 44%.
Right.
It meant that almost 1 in every 2 young persons in St. Lucia were unemployed.
Right.
And we set up the National Apprenticeship Program, the NAPS program.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were doing was we were creating training and building capacity. I remember my hundreds of my constituents, young people, benefited from this program. A number of them did training in areas of hospitality and went on to get very good jobs on the cruise ships. And they're still holding those jobs today. They're building their homes. It's giving their younger siblings an opportunity to see that there's also another way out, that gangs and drugs is not the only way. So these things are important
Another
as well.
mention that significant sums of money were placed at the St. Lucia Development Bank for lending out to young entrepreneurs who wanted to start their small businesses. I mean, it's not being touted, but all of those programs existed. And
well, it was in your cabinet that I didn't have the privilege of serving in when you guys made the mistake and allowed Stephenson King to be the leader of the party. But during that time, remember you had the youth entrepreneurial program, youth entrepreneurship program at the St. Lucia Development Bank.
Right.
And then when we fast forward to 2016, we also had the tourism small business loans.
Mm-hmm.
We made concessions available so that young people can get into their own businesses as well, in addition to what Bradley was doing in the Ministry of Commerce.
And some people may wonder, what does that have to do with crime? Like you said, if people are employed and so on, they're less likely to drift into the criminal activity. But let's not forget, too, that criminals are can be nurtured from very early in the day. What we did, we had a after-school program that catered for kids who did not have care and guidance between the hours where they came from school and their parents came from work. So they would get into an organized program where they would engage in meaningful developmental activities that are beneficial to them and that do not allow them the time to drift into, more unsavory, like less desirable activities. And that after-school program, I think, it is hard to measure the extent of the success and deterrent that you get from those things, but it certainly plays its part in preventing young people from getting into gangs and deviant behavior and so on.
Yes. So, Spider, I think that it is clear that we need to get back to a holistic conversation about crime. We have to create more opportunity, faster opportunities that are being created for the young people of this country. I am extremely disappointed by the attempts of the youth economy. I think that this is nothing more than a public relations stunt. $5,000 as a maximum that a young person can borrow or receive a grant really doesn't cut it. It's very little to start a business. And so what we want to do is to call on the government to increase that amount. So that young people
I am the kind of person who calls a spade a spade. What this is just another disguise for the government to give handouts to St. Lucians. If they're serious about making entrepreneurs of our young people, there will be the hand-holding, the mentorship, the guidance, the training that is required for a business to be successful. You don't just give... the question is, how many of those people who were given the $5,000 are still surviving and thriving in business and, that they have made any progress with it? Or has it just dissipated and disappeared because, of course, they didn't have the requirements to ensure that they become successful entrepreneurs? You see, just like they go and give handouts to this person. Don't forget, that's the way of the Labour Party, They try to make mendicants of people for it to be dependent on them.
Look, Spider, Philip Pear, look at his constituency. He has been successful at politics by exploiting people's poverty.
That's right.
He makes them feel as if he's bringing manna from heaven. So he have these parcels of rice and flour and sugar.
So they always need him.
As well-meaning as that is, what he has often done is that is his distraction from not focusing on long-term sustainable development solutions for the constituency. So when you look at Castries East, it's among some of the worst housing conditions. It's among some of the worst household incomes. It's among some of the most undesirable living conditions for family members.
And
clear signs
that's
of
a high
poverty.
crime area as well.
And the high crime area as well. I don't want to necessarily stigmatize any community.
And not stigmatize the community. We have to be real and call a spade, say what it is.
But for his 6 years, 6 terms of winning elections and serving as an MP, I remain largely unimpressed by what he has done. And I am not surprised that same kind of block or hole politics continues to persist in his prime ministership and in his leadership and management of the general and overall economy. He feels that everything is pash-pash, it's piecemeal. We're, of course, on the eve of an election now, and the people of St. Lucia can see for themselves all of the things that he's rushing to do. We've been begging him to remove VAT on certain food items. When we reduced VAT, Spider, what they did was they said that was a bad decision. The governor of the ECCB came to St. Lucia and said that we had the lowest VAT rate and we should review it and try to increase it. Philip Pear said that he feels vindicated because that was a good advice from the governor. The United Workers' Party, we remain resolute and said, look, having the lowest VAT rate in the Caribbean is not necessarily a bad thing. It makes us more attractive for investment. It is our policy team. I'm calling you Tim. A spider. Mixing up the two shows.
That's all right, man. I'll get there one day.
It's our policy that we keep people's money as much as possible in their pockets. So when Philip Pierre says to you that, you know, they should tax as many people as possible, that's not what the United Workers' Party stands for.
You also have to talk about gas prices as well.
He told us that nothing could happen, Spider, nothing could happen with the global inflation crisis. That it was all imported inflation. That he couldn't do anything. Now all of a sudden, he can remove that. An election is coming. And that's how Philip Pierre operates. He's just a politician and nothing else.
It's just about the election victories. That's all it's about for them. You know, it doesn't matter if the country sink, but once they win election. But I think St. Lucians have become more discerning and far more intelligent about their decision making. And I think we are more focused on our future, and we know that there is a better way and that we deserve better. So I will not be surprised. I'm sure most of you politicians will be surprised at the outcome of the next general election, when that St. Lucian Labour Party government will be swept out of office, and for good reason. So, Dominic, I want now to take you to where I wanted to take you to a while ago.
The U.S. travel ban.
That's correct.
Yeah. And thank you for being so kind with your time on your show.
No problem.
The U.S. travel ban, if it happens, will have severe consequences for all of us. It will completely change the way we live, the way we see our future, and it will completely dash a lot of the hopes that we have now for prosperity. Think of it, Spider.
Yeah.
The United States has an embargo against Cuba. And you just have to look a little north to see what the effects of a small island developing state in the Caribbean that is geographically close to the United States, and how a lack of trade, how a lack of political interface and diplomatic interface, how that in itself has affected the living standards of Cubans. Look at the availability of normal consumer goods. Look at the availability of wealth, of money. Look at the living standards. And it is really unfortunate. Now, we have, in St. Lucia's case, our biggest diaspora is in the United States.
Yeah.
Massive diaspora. Yeah? A number of St. Lucians go to the United States to make children at times. I think you kind of know what I'm talking about, Spider.
You don't have to expose me like that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, two of my children were born in the United States. Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah. Family members that are living there, our lack of ability to go to see them, it would be. I can't think of not being able to go visit my sister who lives there.
Yeah.
Medical reasons, you know, we have had all kinds of issues with our own healthcare situation, and many a times, a number of us, the opportunity that we have to save our lives is to go to the United States to undertake certain severe procedures. Our number one tourist market, tourism accounts for over 60% of the GDP of this country. It generates about 15,000 jobs locally. It's the leading foreign exchange earner. It is the leading sector that drives investment in this country. It affords us greater connectivity to many cities within the United States, the UK, and Canada, and other parts of Europe. The impact is so immeasurable, Spider, that if this happens, I think that every single solution is going to have a debilitating effect on their normal everyday life. So this is a very serious matter. I am disappointed in the manner that the government of St. Lucia has dealt with it. They have continuously, as they have been with most issues, they have not been updating us in some of the developments. I had to read a speech from Skerrit to understand and recognize that the heads of governments have been meeting on these issues, the CIP countries of the Caribbean. They've had several meetings, and the meetings apparently take place on weekends. And if you look at what has been happening in the Caribbean, while Skerrit says he has not received any formal notification from Washington, he has said that he used informal diplomatic channels to confirm that there in fact was a memo. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
So here is satisfied in telling us
he has not gotten any official correspondence.
He has not received any information. But Skerrit in Dominica says, look, I used every single means at my disposal so I can get information from the United States pertaining to this matter. But St. Kitts has gone ahead and they have instituted a residency provision in their CIP Act. So they're saying now that to satisfy the United States, and among their concerns is the fact that CIP citizens don't have to qualify or don't have to do any bit of residency. So now St. Kitts is going ahead to have a residency component in its CIP legislation. So people now that are applying for CIP citizenships in St. Kitts will now have to do a certain amount of residency time. We were not quite sure what that will be. Skerrit said that his country is taking this seriously. He told Dominicans that he's going to do everything possible. He highlighted, Spider, the crucial nature of the Dominicans' need to continue to have political, diplomatic, and cultural ties, not to mention economic, with the United States. Mm-hmm. So all the other prime ministers are on the move. Gaston Brown posted on his Facebook page a meeting that he was having with the European Union, because while the Parliament of St. Lucia recently challenged the honorable opposition leader who said that St. Lucia was on the brink of losing the EU visa, Gaston Brown was meeting with the EU to say, look, these are some of the steps. How is it we can work together? I don't want you to remove the visa. So all the other prime ministers in the region are actively traveling around, engaging our traditional friends to make sure that this does not happen in their country. I couldn't tell you what St. Lucia has done because there has been no information. The information has been very sketchy. All we are told is that they have not received any formal communication from Washington. So, Spider, I'm very concerned by the way that they're dealing with this. This is a serious matter. And there have been many missteps that have brought us to this position. I mean, imagine we are on a list of some of the most notorious countries in the world. Never in my lifetime would I ever expect that this would be the plight of St. Lucia, that we would be seen as among some of the most harmful national security threats to one of our most important traditional friends, the United States. And it is really shocking. It is unprecedented, and the government must be accountable.
Yeah. Well, Senator Fede, I want to thank you for calling in because and having that extensive discussion with you on the issue, on the matter. We look at various aspects, various angles. And I just wanted, to give St. Lucians a different perspective from mine, from someone who has been more directly involved in the industry than I am. And so, we are very grateful for you to give us this perspective and to shed some light on what the United Workers' Party is thinking, given the fact that a government in waiting. We want to know that, there is hope and there are plans afoot within the alternative government that will make things better for St. Lucians.
Thank you very much, Spider. Good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Have a nice day.
Yeah. And Andre, we just heard, Senator Fede speak on some of the things we were discussing here, the travel ban, the death of the visitor. And if it is, in fact, a criminal act, what the possible implications could be. I look at the government and on the issue of crime. I remember, and you see, very often St. Lucians must understand we must look beyond words, because politicians are very good at saying what needs to be said, what they think people want to hear. But the actions is what we should judge. And, there's that saying that action speaks louder than words, very much so, and you judge a person not by their words but by their actions. And so when Philippe Pierre indicated that he will not tolerate any corruption and so on in his government, and that if any of his ministers would be fingered, that he would deal with the matter. Since then, so many of his ministers have been fingered. Rather than indicate...
For corruption?
Yes. Well, I'll name them in a while. Rather than indicate what he is going to do about it, the usual thing, investigator or whatever, not even that. Not even that. He pretends that he does not know. He pretends that it's not serious enough for him to pay attention to it. He will, even dismiss it, tell media people that it's not their business and all of those kinds of things. You have had several allegations and accusations, some of them credible. For example, about Dr. Ernest Healer's handling of the CIP program. The government has not seen it fit to clear the air on that by satisfying St. Lucians, at least by answering some of the questions that have been asked.
So in that case, who's doing the fingering? In the case of Dr. Healer?
The opposition has. Martinez has. And some of the concerns that are expressed by the international community, namely the European Union, the Americans, and so on, clearly indicates that all is not well in the program. So you would think that a government that is serious, a prime minister who is serious about his words and serious about stamping out any corruption or perception of corruption, would have taken a strong stance on the matter. He has done nothing to show that. Now, Kenson Kazimi, another member of his cabinet, okay, there are questions about his sudden accumulation of wealth. And the question is being asked, how has he come by that amount of wealth in such a short space of time within the last 3 years or 3.5 years, during which time he was a member of his cabinet? That warrants a response. Okay? He has not dealt with that. Richard Frederick.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that Kenton did respond on Meet the...
Okay, so you know now
the minister.
So you know now, Andre, how he got his wealth.
Well, he explained.
He explained.
Yeah, at least he gave what he believes to be an explanation.
Do you believe that is an explanation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have
don't know, Andre.
No, I don't. I have no reason to doubt the gentleman. He said that he's worked hard for what he has. That was his explanation.
Andre, that is an easy answer.
So do you think then, in addition to Kenson explaining, at least that even if it's not your satisfaction, that the Prime Minister should still come out and explain as well?
To the public satisfaction. And let me just say something to you. It's easy for anybody to say, I work hard for what I have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But when you're a public figure and you have accumulated millions of property or money or whatever wealth you have accumulated, and you're being asked, because everybody knows the salary of a minister, you're being asked, how did you come by all of that wealth? Because even if he were to save every cent of his salary, he could not have accumulated that wealth from his salary. Now, when you tell me it is because of what you did, that is, and let's not forget what he did. He was a youth and sports officer. That's prior to coming.
By the way, he also spoke about taking a loan.
Yeah. He was, that's prior to coming into government. He was a sportscaster, and he claimed he had some online business.
Yeah, and something else.
Okay, those three things he said. Andre, let's be real. We all know none of those things could give him that wealth. So he accumulated that wealth in the last 3 years while he was in government. We know the salary of a government minister. Okay? Now, anybody can take a loan, but can the loan finance all of those things that you have?
And he said something else. He said, if any young person making a minister's salary doesn't at least purchase a property, then he'd be wasting.
But that's not the issue, Andre. That is not the issue.
Well, he's from what I'm gathering.
It's not a property he purchased. The man has a property in Belcap, near Bellevue area, near Cap Estate, that he bought for over $270,000. He is building 5 condos there. The man has a house for which he took a loan. Okay? This is what the public knows. He has built 3 villas under that house. The man has since then purchased other properties, even though some of them have not been transferred to his name as yet. It is known that he has done that. Andre, you're talking to someone who knows that that is not possible. I too earned a minister's salary. That is not possible. I am not saying...
Maybe you're giving too much of it to your constituents.
No, but he claimed, he complained about how much he has to spend on his constituents. He complained too. So he's doing it. Okay? I am saying to you, I am not saying that he got his wealth by any illegal means. All I'm asking him to do is to account to satisfy us that that is not so. Why hasn't he done so? And if you're serious, Andre, you're going to say to me, I am driving the nice car you have outside, Andre. You'll say to me,
tell us, man.
I took a loan from whatever bank for $100,000. Okay, that's possible. Andre making enough money to get a loan for $100,000. You don't need $100,000 to get a loan for $100,000. But the house, the land, all of those things. You mean your job gave you all of that? You have to tell me, my grandmother gave me, Tony, my brother, gave me this. I have an investment there. I earn that. Let's explain to us, you owe us that.
Right. So in the absence of an explanation, Mr. Montoute, don't you think
the suspicion continues?
Right, but don't you think it's also incumbent upon the opposition now to do their due diligence?
Okay.
And to come with the evidence to the public.
What due diligence can you do to find out that my parents, if you're not a family member or my brother or somebody divulged to you, to know that my parents left property that we inherited? I am the one who have to tell you that. The due diligence we're doing is asking the question.
Right.
And he has to provide the answer. He has not. And as long as he has not, that makes me suspicious, and that gives me the impression that there is something that is being hidden.
Okay, I got that.
Okay.
I got that. Now, in addition to that, Mr. Montoute, you said something a while ago, and I was thinking, and maybe it's a good time to explain to the public why any opposition usually does this sort of thing. Let me explain. A while ago, we were talking about the individual who was found, whose body was found, and rightly so, as an opposition, and even as just a citizen, you are concerned about how it happened and so on. Yes, I agree. You also made another very important point. You said that we are being international community. They're monitoring us. They're monitoring St. Lucia and the goings on. So I'm just curious to know why any opposition, because it happens all the time, why would you say something like the government is facilitating crime, knowing that the international community, as you said, is monitoring, they're listening? Aren't you concerned? Don't you think any opposition should keep these things among ourselves and not say these things publicly as to, tarnish our image, whether it's justified or not? Let me just hear from you why opposition parties tend to do that.
First of all, let me just say to you, some of what I say I get from the international community, because they know more than I do. And they have facilities to carry out further investigation and to discern much more than I can ever discern.
Mm-hmm.
So when they put St. Lucia on a list, I don't even know why until they say why. But they know why they put St. Lucia on the list. Okay? At the end of the day, there's nothing that I am saying that the international community does not already know. As a matter of fact, they probably know the bank accounts of some of those government officials that exist right now that I do not know of. I'm not divulging or disclosing any information to them. What I'm doing is telling them we are all in St. Lucia not alike. That is not our way. There are people who condemn, okay, and take a dim view of that. And I would like to know that the opposition distinguishes themselves as being a part in, as far as it goes, as far as crime is concerned, that they are not facilitators, that they are not culpable, that they're not encouraging anything like that, that they are different. And that, I think, provides hope for me as St. Lucian.
So you're saying opposition parties make these accusations or allegations simply based on the fact that those people on the international community are aware of it? Is that what you're saying?
A lot of it they are aware of. A lot of it they are
Because
aware.
the question was, why do opposition parties do that? Despite the fact that it's embarrassing to the country.
Okay, but let me just say something to you. I would like to present you with the alternative. The opposition says nothing. The rest of us say nothing. All of us keep quiet. What happens now? You're going to have a country with very much. You're not going to have a democracy anymore. You're not going to have an economy anymore. You're going to have a country that will collapse because you have corrupt people running the country. Okay? When you don't speak out, you are tacitly endorsing the ills and the negatives that are taking place.
Even in the face of a lack of evidence, Mr. Montoute, do you think that is? Do you think that is? I'm asking you, any opposition. I'm not talking about the United Workers' Party.
Well,
any opposition, in the absence of evidence,
okay, let me
do
tell
you think it is still justified to make those kinds of statements?
Let me localize the discussion. Let's talk about St. Lucia. The two main parties are SLP and UWP. Let me tell you the difference between the SLP and the UWP. The SLP will just arbitrarily make allegations and accusations with no basis.
Yeah,
they will be.
I agree with you.
Wait for me.
That is what I said. Yeah,
wait for me.
Just hold your thought.
I want to show you the difference.
Yes, that's why I said earlier, opposition parties do it.
No. I want to show you the difference.
How do you mean no?
I said the SLP
but you're
does
doing it, Mr. Montoute.
No, I'm not. The SLP does it. And they now find themselves in a position where they have access, okay, to information. They're in a position to take action. They take no action, but they continue to repeat the nonsense over and over. Look at what I've done to Guy Joseph. Look at the things you've said about Alan Chastanet. They have been in government for the last 4 years. They have taken no action. You mean they love Guy so much that they know those things about him? They are in a position to investigate him, which they have done. They have information and they do nothing. Let me show you the difference between the United Workers' Party. There's evidence that there's corruption in the CIP. To the extent where the leader of the opposition, who is the leader of the United Workers' Party, has taken the matter to court. Isn't that far more serious than a person who's just out there, just casting aspersions, making allegations?
Okay, well, let me give you an example. Now, you mentioned Mr. Joseph. Just this morning, I read a news item about Senator Alison Jean taking him or threatening to take him to court, Mr. Joseph, to court over corruption allegations that she said that he made. She said he made allegations or accusations of corruption against her.
Right.
So I'm saying both parties do it, and I'm asking why.
The difference is whether or not Guy can go to a court and defend what he said. That is the difference. The St. Lucia Labour Party is in a position. They have one of the best forensic investigators in the world that they are paying $30,000. I don't know if it's a week or a month. Robert Linquist. And he has been investigating Guy Joseph for years. You have been in government for 4 years now. And you keep talking nonsense about Guy Joseph and you have done nothing about it. It is evident that you are just casting aspersions and making allegations without any basis, and you cannot substantiate it. I am telling you, I can substantiate the things that I'm saying. Because what am I saying? That Kenson Kazemi has become wealthy in 3 years. That's what I'm saying. You cannot deny that. There's evidence to show that. What I am saying, I didn't say he stole any money. I didn't say he made any bubble. I'm asking to satisfy me that that's not what he did. How did you get it? Now remember, Andre, I always tell you, you will tell me how out of place I am and where to go. If I ask you that, you don't owe me that information. Kenson Kazemi owes me that information. I have a right to that information. You understand what I'm saying? Now, when a government now does not constitute something that is required by law, the Integrity Commission, for almost a year, there's no Integrity Commission. You're trying to tell me, what is it you're hiding? What is it you're protecting? You're trying to tell me I must be confident in that government when there are all those allegations with basis, with substance being made, and there's not even an Integrity Commission to say, well, that is one of the checks that we have in our democracy that could, say, well, boy, we can look into that and so on. They don't even put it together. When the CIP program is taking place, and we are asking if passports are sold to the tune of billions, you're building a hotel that costs about 600,000. Where is the rest of the money? What happens to it? To whom does it go? You are supposed to present by law, again, by law. You hear them talking about, let me just say something to you. Everything you heard the Labour Party accuse anybody of, know that that's what they're practicing. They're law breakers and all that kind of thing. They accuse the EWP of being it. Well, I'm just pointing out breaking of the law by the sitting government there right now. One, by not putting the Integrity Commission together for almost a year, which is a requirement by law. Number two, the CIP program, the law governing the CIP program, that's a law of this country, says that you must provide a report to Parliament every year by October. Okay? That is not being done. Andre, you will not ask me why it's not being done? My answer to you is because they're hiding something. If you're not hiding anything, why not present the information? Because you see, when they present that information, admittedly, I don't sit and listen to Parliament debates and all that kind of thing. I find it boring and a waste of time most times. And you can quote me here, I just said it. But Alan Chastanet and Bradley Felix are sitting there, okay, on my behalf, Andre, to say, hey, what's going on here? Ask a question there. Why is this so? That is why we want it to be brought to Parliament, so that I can have a right, I can get the right that I have to know what is going on.
Sorry to disturb you. I see the leader of the opposition, he's calling. So would you ask him to give us a call on
okay.
the...
Okay, leader of the opposition, if you're listening to us, could you call our landline, which is 572 9710.
Yes. Or you can call the WhatsApp platform as well.
Oh, yeah.
2870971.
And we will definitely accommodate you. I want to hear what you have to say. Because very often, Andre, that doesn't mean my views agree entirely with that of the members of the United Workers' Party, But I'm saying it like I see it. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? But I would like to hear from them. And if the leader of the opposition calls in, I want him to satisfy me that it will not be another series of we are carrying out investigations and I never hear anything about the investigation. Now, Andre, if I suspect you stole that mic and we carried out an investigation, okay, you were able to show your receipt or whatever thing. Come out and say to people, boy, we thought Andre had stolen that because that fancy mic we see in there, we thought he couldn't have, but he has a receipt, he did not steal it. But he owes it to you, Andre, to do that. Because by asking the question, we're already making people suspicious of you. We're already, in a sense, affecting your image. You know how many investigations the SLP have carried out and we have never heard anything about it? I remember when I served between 2006 and 2011, they carried out investigations about the huts that were built at Pigeon Point, near the beach park there, and so on. SSDF, they carried out an investigation. I asked them, well, let the public know, because you all were suggesting that there was something untoward that went on there. You all carried out an investigation. Let them know what the result of the investigation was. Linquist has been getting hundreds of thousands of our dollars to investigate Guy Joseph. Let us know, what you spend our money for and what is the outcome of it. You understand what I'm saying? And if needs be, apologize to Guy Joseph and to St. Lucians for the nonsense that you all have perpetrated against him. you know. And so this is where I say to you, we are not just, well, I am certainly not arbitrarily making aspersions, casting aspersions and making allegations. Remember too, I say certain things about Richard Frederick. It's not coming from me. I'm just repeating what the St. Lucia Labour Party, his colleagues, have said about him. I'm just saying they said that about him. Okay? And that has raised my suspicions about him. And I too, having been in his midst, okay, on occasions, I am very suspicious about him as an individual and the things that he does. I have questions and issues with his character. Okay, so I'm not just there saying things that like, Andre, I've been threatened to be taken to court. I've been in this business for over 20 years. Okay, the only person who was threatened to take me to court was Richard Frederick, but he has not. You think with the things that I'm saying, Richard Frederick would not love to take me to court to bring me, but he'll be making a big mistake if he takes me to court, Andre. Because when I go to court, what will be exposed, I come in here and say it too, and it will be a lot more than what I'm already saying. You understand what I'm saying? So take me to court, you know, take me to court. Now, I say to anybody, if there are certain things that they insinuate about me, if any of them say it openly and publicly, I'm taking them to court. And then I'm coming here to tell how much money I made from taking them to court. You understand what I'm saying? But I don't just cast aspersions. Yes.
I've asked him to call the main line, but he's still calling my phone. I don't know what else I can do.
Can't you call him on the WhatsApp number?
No, I can't. No, I can't.
Okay, leader of the opposition, if you can call us in there, because if you call my phone, I cannot put you on air. If you call Andre's phone, he cannot put you on air. So if you can call 572-9710, that's the landline. And Andre, could you give him the WhatsApp?
WhatsApp is 287-0971.
Okay, so if you call in, we'll be happy to accommodate you. But in the meantime, Andre...
And if not, remember you have to take calls as well?
Calls, right. I was just saying, if not, we can look at opening the lines now, because I'm sure there are a number of people, SLPs like UWPs, who are itching to call, because don't worry yourself, you know, Andre, Meet the Opposition attracts a lot of the opposition, you know.
That's the whole idea.
That's the whole idea. Because, you know, they're quick to come in. Contrary to what they do in terms of shielding their people, we know what we are saying and we can defend what we are saying. That's why we open the line. Open the line.
Yes, somebody's on the line.
Yes, good morning. Welcome to Meet the Opposition. Please go ahead and make your contribution.
Good morning, Spider, and good morning, Andre.
Oh,
good morning.
That's Guy Joseph.
Mr.
I don't have
Joseph.
to ask. I know that voice very well.
Yes.
By the way, I don't have to introduce you, but just formality, Deputy Political Leader of the United Workers' Party and thus candidate for Castries Southeast.
So I just want to make a quick comment, Spider and Andre, on the issue that Andre brought up. A couple Sundays ago, I was served by a police officer.
Oh, yeah. Great that you called. Go ahead.
Yes. I received the letter and I read the letter. I took it to my lawyer, and everybody is confused about the letter that was received from the lawyer. I could write a better letter than that, Andre.
In that case, I won't ask you which lawyer. In that case, I won't ask you which lawyer.
I mean, I've been making these statements for... In fact, the letter states that I made that statement in October of 2024. What was interesting to me is the allegations of corruption that they are claiming that I made are the allegations in relation to the clearing of the equipment belonging to Tony Leon. And what I said in the letter, or what I said on the platform, is my PS was sent on leave and somebody was sent from the Ministry of Finance, which means that Allison was never implicated. So I am very confused by what Allison is trying and what she is saying. But to say that her name does not appear anywhere in the Linquist report, Andre, I wish I was in the studio. I can show you more than 20 times. Alison Jean was the PS of the Ministry of Communications and Works. And the period under scrutiny was when I was minister and she was PS. How could her name not feature? She was the deputy chair of SLASPA, who was responsible for the airport project when asphalt and mining was involved in the negotiations to build HIA airport. So, you see, but I don't want to say too much. You know why, Andre? I've been waiting for somebody of substance from the Labour Party to make certain pointed statements about me. I know you said, oh, I said this about Alison and she's taking me to court. I challenge you, Andre, as a media person, not Spider, you, Andre, to show me one place where any official member of the Labour Party has made a definitive statement about Guy Joseph. Miguel made a definitive statement about me. We are in court today. Every time Labour Party says something, they either asking a question, they making a general remark, and they make it appear as if it's Guy Joseph. But the Labour Party is smart. They know what they are saying and what they are doing in terms of being liable. Because you must be able to prove that your reputation or injury has been caused to you in order for a defamation case to stand. So when the Labour Party, and understand that how it is said, a lot of the things are said in Parliament. You have certain privileges in Parliament. Isn't that so, Andre? That
Guy,
you have immunity.
Guy, sorry about that, but I have to interrupt you to let you know that I have the leader of the opposition in studio here. But you can go ahead and finish what you're saying before I engage him. Yeah.
So you have immunity in Parliament. I mean, for the Labour Party to be doing, and they know what they are doing. They know there's nothing on Guy Joseph. Now, Alison said how much of a liar I am, and I'm not fit for office. If Guy Joseph is a liar and that makes him unfit for office, who in the Labour Party is fit for office? Up to the last sitting of Parliament, the Prime Minister and the Speaker said, they never said, he did not say that
they borrow money from
the
NIC.
previous government borrowed from NIC.
Yeah.
And it's been played for everybody to hear. You remember Kenny said he never said to the criminals, give a break.
Guy,
and afterwards,
Guy,
you all played it on H. Andre, you all have
Guy, you're
it
talking
all
to
the
Andre
time,
Paul.
you know.
You're talking to Andre Paul, you know, man. You forget the current Prime Minister never said he would give $1,500. He told Andre that.
Even when Andre played it for him.
And even when Andre played it, yes, he still tried to deny it, yeah. So Andre knows what you're talking about, firsthand. He will not say that because he's a diplomat.
In Alison's book.
Yeah.
But I can prove that Alison's name appears maybe 50 times in the Linquist reports that I have seen.
Yeah, and so they're not releasing those reports.
Maybe she has a report that is separate and different from the report that I have. But I know her name is featured very prominently. All the communications and everything. But you see, Andre, I've been waiting because it's when you go to court, matters are settled. So I want to make it very clear to persons. I have never made a statement about anybody that I cannot substantiate with fact. And Alison Jean's name is featured prominently in the Linquist report. And that is as much as I will say for now, because she's not... You think I couldn't respond to her before the 10 days so that she would not come out and say, I wanted her to do what she's doing there. And I want her to continue to do what she's doing there. Because you know what? I have recourse also. The court is not for some people and not for others. And I will present in due course my evidence to back up what I'm saying, and that I would never go and mention Alison Jean's name. Alison Jean, as far as I'm concerned, is insignificant in the political arena at this point in time. When she would declare herself a candidate, which I know she has tried to be for a while, then I will deal with her accordingly. But I want to let her know she's not as significant in my book as she thinks she is. So I will deal with that in my own way and in my own time. But I want St. Lucia to know, and that's why I deliberately disclosed on your program this morning, Spider and Andre, that the evidence is there to show. Alison just said, I listened to her, I listened to both the NBC report and I think it was the DBS or Choice report, where she said her name is nowhere. I said, well, there must be another Alison Jean that was PS. And while we are at it, Andre, one of these days when they bring meet the opposition here, she boasts about her being PS. Ask her how she became PS. It would be interesting to know how she became PS and when she became PS. Because people like to tout their reputation as if they are the only ones with a reputation and other people don't have a reputation to protect. But you know what? I will deal with that. But I want St. Lucia to know, and I'm repeating it, that Alison Jean's name is featured prominently in the Linquist report. And that's a fact. That's not a make-believe. I have my documents.
You said that on
documents. I don't make statements.
Guy, now let me just tell you something. And you said that on the program. I'm the host of the program. You have to give me that so that I can show it or read from it at the next time I come here.
I can give it to you, Spider, and you'll see how many times that
you said you have evidence. You have to provide the evidence.
Well,
yes.
I mean, I can just say to you,
Guy
is being kind. Right. Because the other people that are included in the Linquist report is Stevenson King, Rufus Bousquet, and Richard Frederick.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, I mean, again, you would have an interesting dilemma that all of that information showed up in the Linquist report. But the person that you did not have any information on was Alan Chastanet and Guy Joseph. But they caused Linquist to pursue an investigation into the two of us. So much so that the famous documents, court documents, was a request that was sent by the U.S. government, by the St. Lucia government, to the U.S. government to get Tony Asenza's phone records. Because the only thing that they could find was phone calls between Guy Joseph and Tony Asenza and Alan Chastanet and Tony Asenza. Mind you, Guy Joseph was the Minister of Communications and Works and Tony Asenza was doing road works. I was the Minister of Tourism and Aviation, and the airport and the cruise ship port were involved in the developments. So that was why there was phone calls. But that's the only evidence. But they had hard evidence on Stevenson King. The whole issue with Rufus Bousquet and his alias name, what was it again?
Bruce Tucker.
Bruce Tucker. They had all the details of which prison he was in, all the stuff, right? So it is interesting that the government would have not pursued going after those persons where they were clear derogations in the law. But yet the persons that they had the least amount of evidence on, those were the two that they were going to go after. And that's why they could never make the Linquist report public. And I want to also say this to you, that when we came into government, Mr. Linquist initially was refusing to deal with us, as if he had a special relationship with the previous government. So much so, the last payment from Mr. Linquist was made while I was Prime Minister. And to find out, payments were being made to Mr. Linquist behind the scenes. And all the documentation that should have been in the Attorney General's office
that should have been in the Accountant General's office who was making the payments. That information was not there.
And let's not forget that Mr. Linquist was reinstated as an investigator for the government of St. Lucia since this last government came back into office.
And you know why? Because he never finished the first report. He could find no information on the two people that he was supposed to investigate, Guy Joseph and Alan Chastanet. Search as he searched.
And 4 years later, Andre is still. And that's why I tell you, you know.
Mr. Joseph is still on the line, by the way.
Yes. Oh, Guy, I mean, yeah, I know you're sorry you're on the line still. I just want to say.
I'm listening. I mean,
before you continue, I just want to say to you.
The opposition is on point. We've gone through this thing. We've sat. And he can tell them about the thickness of the document and the process. We had to threaten to take Linquist to court to get the report from him.
50 boxes. 50 boxes. Okay? But you know what? Bob his name is Bob Linquist,
right.
and he's very famous for a big company in the
Fixer.
No, do you remember the company in the U.S. that he was the big investigator for, out of Texas, and in the circles in the U.S., his name is called Bob the Biller, not the builder, the biller, right? So he's always tantalizing his clients that there's more to be found. There's more to be found. Let me go another month. Let me go another time, right? And it comes to nothing. And that's what has happened with him again. And this government continues to be fooled, right, by persons like that. Look what is happening with the GPH. I mean, can you imagine, Andre, that the Minister of Tourism wants to bring to the court, listen to the House, an unsigned contract by the government, but signed by GPH, and make that a public document. But the contract that the government has signed, he does not want to make a public document. And then he would admit to tell you in the House, Alan Chastanet was playing GPH and the cruise lines. And he was going back and forth, and eventually he signed the deal with the cruise lines, and GPH didn't even know. That is true. Because at all times I was trying to get the best deal for the government and the people of St. Lucia.
I'm getting off the line so I can listen on radio.
Okay, Guy, but before you go, I just want to say, and don't complain, man. You got 10 days, you complain. I only got 7 days.
I don't complain, Spider. I'm waiting to be served.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
You know?
By the way, you taking any calls, or you just allowing the opposition leader to?
Yeah, we only have 10 more minutes, so I'll allow the opposition leader.
Andrew said he's going to give us some extra time because he was making me wait downstairs.
Actually, I forgot that our office manager was out. My apologies.
No problem.
My apologies.
That's the level of hypocrisy and inconsistency that's taken place. You're the government in office. You're responsible for answering the questions. It cannot be every single time that anybody in our society is going to ask this government to explain something that the answer starts off with what the previous government did. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're in government. You ought to know. You have all the documents. So when a Richard Frederick would now go into the House and repeat the same thing I have him in court for, suggesting that I as Prime Minister, sold passports to Teo King and allowed Teo King to collect that money, and that's the money that Teo King was using for DSH. Okay, you're in government. You're telling me all this time has gone by and you've not found the passports I've sold? And the reason why you cannot find it, because it never happened. Prime Minister does not have that authority, Andre, to do that. You would think the Prime Minister has that authority. Does not have that authority to issue passports. There's a naturalization process of when you were born in St. Lucia, and there's a CIP process. And each one of them, you have to go through different government agencies in order for the passport to be issued. The Prime Minister has no role in that. But why? Why is he doing that? Because Ernest Hillier was asked multiple times, how many passports or how many files, a file is a family, how many families have you allocated to Galaxy to apply for? Repeatedly. You would know that, right, Andre? Repeatedly. Lissa, all kinds of people would ask the question. The only person that came out and said how many it was Martinez. And Martinez said he got the information from McLeod.
Right.
Okay? When McLeod went up to Washington, D.C., McLeod revealed how many files. He said that there was 6,000 files that were given to Galaxy for the hotel and 6,000 files for the infrastructure project. So that means if you take on average 4 people per family, 48,000 passports. That's a fact. That was then substantiated because the contracts now were made public. And those contracts make up my evidence in the judicial review case and have been accepted in the court as being legitimate. So there's no guessing anymore. The question that St. Lucians have to ask themselves, and that is the questions that Ernest Hilaire, Philip Pierre, and the CIP board and the cabinet of St. Lucia refused to answer. Why? If Galaxy was going to build a $300 million hotel and you gave them 1,000 files at $300,000, $300 million, you really believe the story that Galaxy is saying that the cost of the hotel because of inflation has gone from $300 million US dollars, listen to carefully, to $750 million US dollars. Okay? So they said because the project has gone to $750 million US dollars, we want to get extra files. And Ernest Hilaire and the government of St. Lucia gave them 5,000 extra files. 6,000 files in total. They reduced the price from $300,000 to $200,000. They reduced the administrative fees from $50,000 to $30,000, and also turned around and said to Galaxy, we're going to make you a developer, and as a developer, we're going to pay you a commission on every file. And the commission that they're going to pay them is equivalent to the administrative fee. So that means that the Galaxy is going to get $1.2 billion, 6,000 times $200,000, plus $30,000 US times 6,000 files, 180 million US. So almost $1.5 billion is what Galaxy is getting to build a hotel for $750 million. And that contract was signed in 2022. And Galaxy promised that they would have the hotel completed by 2025, 3 years. Galaxy now, and part of the court case, submitted the evidence to say that up to March, they've spent $75 million. And here it is, $15 million is on works in St. Lucia, of which Reno Gajada got a contract for $11 million US. The remaining $60 million was spent outside of St. Lucia, which I question. But that's the number they gave. So you're telling me after 3 years, you've only spent 10%. But meanwhile, the report that they just gave us says that they have already now have applications for 5,000 files. And that report was only up until March of 2024.
Yeah, 2024.
Almost a year ago, well, past a year ago.
Yeah.
So how many more have gone since then? So Galaxy has sold all 6,000 files, and meanwhile they've only spent 10% of the money, and of the money they've spent, 1% has been spent in St. Lucia. Sorry, 2%.
Yeah.
Okay, been spent in St. Lucia. That makes sense to you, Andre? Should that make sense to anybody in St. Lucia? And if that was not bad enough, the same Ernest Hilaire, the same CIP board, and the same cabinet and prime minister would turn around and give now Galaxy a new contract for infrastructure. And we don't have to guess what they did, because when they tried to get Galaxy to renegotiate the contract, Galaxy said, hell no. When we signed the contract, we had already contemplated the MOA coming in. And Galaxy said it very clearly. I want us to understand this, because some people say, well, I don't want to get into the detail. The detail matters. Government turned around, and Galaxy turned around and said, I will give you $100 million US. And in exchange, you give me 6,000 files. And the contract says it. That's why Galaxy was not required to put the $100,000 for the sale of the passports into an escrow account, because that money was going to Galaxy, because Galaxy was going to give them $100 million. Now you would have thought that the $100 million, right, would have come into a bank account somewhere, that the Ministry of Infrastructure or the Ministry of Finance or some government agency would have access. No. Here the deal. Here the deal. Galaxy gets to keep the money. The government of St. Lucia was to sign an MOU and list out all the projects that would need to be done. Galaxy was going to select the contractor, and all Galaxy had to do was to send the invoices, the paid invoices of the contractor as proof of the $100 million. That makes sense to anybody in St. Lucia? So the court case that we have on the real estate program is two things. One, maladministration. Was the government of St. Lucia acting in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia when they increased the number of files from 1,000 to 6,000? Were they acting in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia when they reduced the price from 300,000 to 200,000? Were they acting in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia when they paid Galaxy a commission equivalent to the administrative fee so that they would receive nothing? Are they acting in the best interest of the people that up to today, when no matter how many times we ask the question, anybody asks the question, how much money is in the escrow account? Because you know what, Andre? If in fact you've sold all the files, $1.5 billion worth of passports, and you've only spent $75 million, and there's over $600 million or whatever in the account, guess what? I move on. Because we know that the money is there.
Yeah.
But they have not told us. And history has shown in St. Kitts, and history has shown in Grenada, that the money is not there in the escrow account, because the moment they put the money into the escrow account, they're taking it out just as fast.
Mr. Opposition Leader, let me just ask you a question. If your party were to win the next election, will you shut down the CIP program, or you will make some changes? Because from what we're hearing there, it sounds like this is just really, really a confusing arrangement. And it's like, what bothers me the most is the fact that an organization can make so much money from selling passports, and we the people don't get anything out of it. How could this thing be set up in that way? Who set this up?
I'm going to put two people on the spot: the Attorney General's office and the Director of Finance's office. So if you take the infrastructure contract as an example, how can the Minister of CIP sign a contract with Galaxy to borrow $100 million? Okay? How could they have allowed Galaxy to hold the money when the CIP Act says the money must be in an account? Before you approve any of the passports, the government must satisfy itself the money has been paid. No such regime was put in. I could only hold those persons accountable, because that's in breach, in my opinion, and the court hopefully will determine, in breach of the Finance Act. So here it is, in my humble opinion, bad actors, people who are supposed to be protecting the interests of the people of this country, permanent secretaries. The Attorney General's office is supposed to be an independent office. It has to be, because it's overseeing contracts. All contracts must go through if it's a government contract, must go through the Attorney General's office. But you ask a very important question, because when we win, we will inherit this mess. And that's why I've made it very public. I believe at this point, I have, like Ralph Gonzalez. Ralph said it. What did he say? That the governments in this region have been given years to fix up the problem, but they cannot, because the money is too sweet. That's Ralph Gonzalez's words. He said people hate him because he's standing in the way between them and a pot of gold. I have no confidence, sadly, in any government saying they're going to do something. Because when it comes to CIP, we've all been proven wrong time and time and time again. And that's why I said the CIP program can work, but it's bad actors. It's not the program itself. It's the people who are managing the program that are causing the corruption. Let us put the program into the OECS, have one singular CIP unit. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, everybody who becomes an economic citizen, Andre, is a citizen of the OECS. So you must know that the Chinese who came to St. Lucia many years ago came to St. Lucia because they got their citizenship in Dominica and then moved here. And we treat them as St. Lucians.
Also, I asked you about when passports are sold, files are sold, and so on. I mean, we have what you said, $1.something billion. Why is it now that we as a people don't benefit from that?
And that's a question you have to ask your government, because your government will say to you that Alan Chastanet is the impediment of progress. That by me challenging these things, I'm stopping the government from doing the work. Well, they've had 4 years. They've sold all the passports. Where's the work? Where's Rock Hall? Where are the highways? Where all this money is supposed to go? But you see, that's why I'm saying to you, the devil's in the detail. Once the contracts became public, and you read the contracts, there was no intentions for there to be any money. So Galaxy wrote, you remember reading this. Imagine, Andrew.
Sorry, Mr. Opposition Leader. I want to go back to that point.
Please go ahead.
You said $1.something billion was raised by Galaxy.
Correct.
How much of that comes to St. Lucia? Of that $1.something billion? I want to know.
Well, I would say to you, hardly none.
Right. So why is it set up that way?
So first of all, that's why I have them in court. Was it reasonable? Is it acting in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia? That if a person says the hotel is going to cost $750 million, the government, first of all, has an obligation to see the bill of quantities and make sure for themselves that that's what it's going to cost. Okay? Why would you then give them more money than the $750 million? Why? Why? And the only answer that any reasonable person can have is because they were not selling the passports for the $200,000. So in the case of St. Kitts, and again, we're not speculating here, Andrew. This is fact. In the MSR case in St. Kitts, MSR provided 150 files of persons who applied for citizenship in St. Kitts under the famous prison project, which is just like the hotel project. When the government wrote to those persons to say, can you give me proof that you paid the right amount of money, 13 people came back right away and said, we did not pay the right amount of money and we give up our citizenship. 52 of the 150 said, we've not paid the right amount and we're going to work with you to pay the money so we can keep our passports. And the government said they're in negotiations with the remaining amount. So the evidence of discounting, the discounting is a hotel, a passport costs $200,000. I come to Spider and I say, hey, it costs $200,000. Give me $50,000. I will finance the remaining amount of money. And I will transmit $200,000 in your name to the escrow account. So the escrow agent writes, says, oh, he received not the money directly from Spider, but he received the money on behalf of Spider. And then the developer turns around and takes the money back out of the escrow account. Why? Because he's being allowed to. Now we know that that's the case here because the minister is running away from the truth. He's playing semantics. What did he say to you? The money doesn't belong to St. Lucia.
Right.
Okay, so it doesn't belong to St. Lucia in the sense that it's St. Lucia's money. But the money was given to the developer in exchange for the developer to build the hotel. So the government, it goes into the escrow account to make sure the money is being spent the right way. Just the same way you go to build a house with a bank. The bank doesn't give you the money, Andre. You have to provide the contract from the contractor, and then there is what you call certificates of completion. When the foundation is completed, the bank gives the contractor X number of dollars until the house is completed. That's exactly what an escrow agent does. It makes sure that there's threshold achievements before the money can be dispersed. And that's why I'm saying to you, it's a good program, but there are bad actors. and people are not doing their job in protecting the interests of the people of St. Lucia. And I want to repeat that. I'm only simply holding the government accountable. Are you doing it the right way? And if you're doing it the right way, the evidence should be very easy to provide, Andre. Nobody should be confused about this. By now, we're supposed to have the hotel. Because the reason why you gave the passports in the first place was to say, okay, we know things are tough to raise money. Okay, we're going to use our citizenship program. You go out and sell the passports, and you can use the money to be able to build a hotel. But meanwhile, we're supposed to collect an administrative fee. So the government of St. Lucia was supposed to collect $180 million on the sale. It is not there. No money. Why? Because he paid it back to them in commission. The same thing with the infrastructure program. So if we came in, one of the first things we would do, we would write everybody who's obtained a passport under the CIP program specifically for infrastructure, if that's around, and the real estate program, and ask and have them provide proof, evidence that they paid the money. If they didn't pay all the money, they have to either pay us the difference or they're going to lose their passports. That we would want to have a singular program with the OECS. And here again now is where I disagree with Ralph. So I agree with him that it's being mismanaged. So I said to him at the meeting, but if you genuinely are saying that St. Vincent is not part of the CIP program, then you must ask for the Bastille Treaty to be amended and for economic citizens not to be allowed access to St. Vincent. Make sense to you? Okay? Because you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, because the Bastille Treaty says that all OECS citizens have access to each other's island.
Freedom of movement.
Freedom of movement, yeah.
And you recognize them. We can work in each other's islands.
Yeah.
We're fully integrated. Right? That's what's not happened at Carriacou, but that's happened at the OECS level.
And by the way, when Ralph Gonzalez said that the money is sweet, was he referring to the people in general or somebody else?
The people being sweet?
Yeah, the money being sweet. Yeah.
The money being sweet was a reference to it being corrupt. There's too much money at play. Right? I mean, and you can play the tape. It's not.
I heard him.
I'm not taking words from Ralph's mouth. Ralph was very clear that the corrupt practices, he was very, very, very clear. And this is his own colleagues. All these leaders of labor rights. And he's the chief comrade. Right? So again, it seems to be that in many cases it's not the message, but it's the messenger. If Alan Chastanet was to have been as clear and crystal clear as Ralph, I would have been crucified. Right? And particularly as being a leader of the opposition, even though I was a former prime minister. He's a current prime minister. All the persons who are prime ministers right now in the OECS are all labor rights. They're all colleagues together, all comrades. They all come and celebrate with each other, blah, blah, blah. Right? And he called them corrupt. And he said there's no hope that they will ever get it right. Now here's the problem, Andrew. And that's what we're confronting. And that's the issue that St. Lucians must now understand. For those persons who want to remain silent to the most important question that you ask, where's the money? Okay, so where's the $150 million? Where's the hotel? Okay, where's the $180 million US? Where's the $100 million that's supposed to be spent in infrastructure? Where's that? All right, can't find it. But now, the US, the UK, Canada, and Europe have given up trying to get these governments to do the right thing and are saying to us that this CIP program is a security threat to nations. So let me give you an example. When we had visa-free with the UK, you know that we don't have visa-free anymore. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. You have to apply for what's called an ESTA. If a Pakistani had a St. Lucia passport and wanted to travel to the UK previously, he could have, because it was visa-free. What was happening is that person, when they got on the plane, destroyed their St. Lucia passport. And when they arrived in England, were seeking political asylum. That's one example of the security threat that was taking place. We've seen in the UK, in the US, and in Europe, persons in the last couple of years who've been arrested for conspiracy, going after the financial services of those countries, and they had passports from St. Kitts and from Dominica. Security threat. Because they embraced us, and the immigration wall is lower when you come from these OECS countries. We're imposing a threat. And they kept saying, do your CIP program, but make sure you do it in a way in which it's not going to jeopardize the security. All right? We have a government today. The EU has already terminated visa-free access for Vanuatu. I never can pronounce it right.
Vanuatu.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. It took them over 4 years to do so, because there's a process they have to go through. So the EU now has gone to its parliament and said, we don't want to do that again. We want to give this particular committee the authority that if they suspect CIP programs, acts of terrorism, whatever, that committee can make the decision by themselves without having to go to a parliament. That bill to give that committee the authority is going to the parliament in September. And all the pundits, all the experts in immigration, etc., are saying this is the EU's way of saying, get your act together, because now, if we're not happy with it within 24 hours, that committee can suspend the Schengen visa access for 12 months by itself and ask for a further investigation. And if after 12 months it's not satisfied that the country has fixed up the problems, they can terminate it. The committee. We don't have to go to big parliament anymore. That's happened. The US now has put us on a ban list. I believe that they've put us on the ban list for two reasons. One, because of the persons returning, the what you call them, deportees returning, and how we're processing them and whether we're willing to accept them easily. And the second one is CIP. Up to last week, the Prime Minister is denying that there's any conversation taking place. Yet, the Prime Minister in Antigua has said that he feels like he's being bullied, right? The Prime Minister of Dominica has said that he's now gone and brought people in at high levels to continue the conversation. So what? We're to believe that the government of the United States is only talking to those two countries and not talking to St. Lucia? They're not even being transparent and honest with us about our own future. So what is it, jeopardy? It may not come out that there is going to be a ban for St. Lucians to travel to America, but there's going to be a tightening and a scrutiny even more so. So who's going to pay the price? The people. If now you need a visa to go to Martinique, who's paying the price? We're all paying the price. We have to be interested in these things. And continuing to say it's too confusing, I don't want to get involved, it's not really important, blah, blah, blah. It is important. And the evidence is there. It's not about when you want to believe me. Go and read it for yourself. You just have to read the one letter from Galaxy on the infrastructure program. And it tells you how this government is handling the resources of the states, how it's handling the welfare of people in this country. And we are in serious trouble. And as Ralph said, it apparently is too sweet. It's too sweet.
Yeah.
So to do the right thing, right? They cannot bring themselves to do the right thing. Telling me, you have, what's it called? The chairman of CIP, Lauren Theophilus. But no, the public has not been told that he's left, correct? But in the affidavits in the court case, they've admitted that he's gone. So if you can admit it in the affidavits, how can you can't come and look the public in the eye and say that the chairman is gone and why he's gone? And who his replacement is going to be?
Okay, Mr. Leader of the Opposition.
I was generous to give you 15 minutes.
As Andre is telling us his time to go, but I really do appreciate you dropping by and shed some light on the CIP subject, because it is not a dead issue. It is very much alive and very much of consequence to us in this country. You know, Andre, this was a special program. I want to thank you, first of all, for being as generous as you have been. It's a pity we didn't realize that your officer, our manager, wasn't there to let the leader of the opposition in earlier. But we can always have you back another time. Let me just say that it was a special program in the sense to that.
Well, in our defense, we didn't know he was coming in live. We didn't know.
So I also want to say that it was a special program today, listeners. I gave you all the entire leadership of the United Workers' Party. I had Dominic on, I had Guy Joseph on, and I had Alan Chastanet as well. So you got the entire leadership. But we realize that there's a lot more to discuss, because quite apart from CIP, there are some other subjects I want to touch on with you. So I will bring you back.
I will, and if I just can for 1 minute, Andrew, is to speak about the crime situation that's taking place in our country right now.
1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a serious problem. And also, one of the consequences of what's been taking place, I've spoken about it, is that people are in trauma. I'm convinced of that, Andrew. Because even when these killings are taking place, we're only thinking of it as a number. We're not understanding the multitude of families and church groups and schools, because all these people had lives. These people were affecting people, right? And when I can see that a young woman who was pregnant could be killed and her baby killed, and not feel that emotional outcry and outrage in a country, it's very similar to when I go somewhere and I saw a young girl whose brother was killed and she wasn't crying. It's trauma. We are in trauma. We are. And that's why I'm asking St. Lucians to think of all of ourselves as being brothers and sisters. We're going to go to Wilton's Yard and New Village bringing gifts, not politics. No yellow shirts, no parading, but to go and hug our brothers and sisters down there who have had over 27 persons killed in the last 3 years from those communities. 27, right? And to show some love.
Staggering figures, man.
Okay? Show some love. We can deal with, and we will have to deal with, why we're in the state we're in. But right now, when people ask what they can do, this is what we can do, is to show compassion, to show a deeper level of empathy, and to stop stigmatizing those communities, because it's only making it worse, not better. And let us show all governments and all politicians and everybody else that at the end of the day, we care about each other. And let's not fall into that trap of stigmatizing. But I can tell you, in my community and in other communities, a hug, a kiss, an embrace, a support, and to just say, I see you, I hear you, I feel for you, that goes a long way in helping resolve. Because we must get the hate out. Let's not allow it to be revengeful. So Friday afternoon, we're going to be going down. Come and join us. It's prayers, bring gifts, care baskets.
What time?
I think it's going to be from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There'll be more information coming out, but I'm saying to everybody again, no party colors. I've asked my party to support the Archbishop in his request that there be a day of prayer and a day of fasting, and we're just adding one more element to it, which is the love and the respect for each other. Okay?
Okay, I think that's a good note to end on.
Yes,
So let me thank everyone. Don't forget, join us on Sunday for United Workers' Party Flabo Live in Sozel, and on Monday you have me with Like It Is. Andre, thanks a lot. And hopefully we'll have you next week, Mr. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr. Spider Montoute. Thank you. This has been Meet the Opposition. Heard and seen on Rev of St. Lucia every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You have yourself a great day.